Okay, my name is Nancy Davidson. I'm a lifelong resident of Santa Barbara and Carpinteria and general area. My grandparents came to Santa Barbara in, gosh, that must have been 1917, I believe. So I've seen a lot of changes.
Where did they come from?
They came from Scotland, immigrated from Scotland. They got married in Vancouver. That's where my dad was born, and then they came down to Santa Barbara back in the day when, well, they were here for the 1925 earthquake, and my granddad was a contractor. So there were lots of things happening in those days. I still have a letter that he wrote about the earthquake, and it was really interesting. So I'm kind of steeped in Santa Barbara history, and I love this area. I love the scenery, and that's why I like to paint it.
Can you describe what type of painting style you have?
Ooh, it's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different styles. I love all kinds of art. Started in watercolor, but now I'm working in oils primarily. I love contemporary artists. I love traditional art. I think it all speaks to us in one way or another. And my work in particular, I think I've got a lot of traditional features to it, but it also has a contemporary quality to it because I'm focused on the design and the formal aspects of art. So I try to make it work on all different levels so there's a little something for everybody, and it's still recognizable.
Can you tell me what people or what things have influenced your art?
Yes. Boy, how far back? My grandparents, my grandfather's brother-in-law actually helped Ed Breen in his studio with his etchings. Ed Breen was an artist in the 20s through the 40s. He lived in Santa Barbara, and he did mainly etchings, a few watercolors of vaqueros, and the whole style, this California style primarily. He was also a cowboy. And so as a little child, I would spend a lot of time at my grandparents' house because they lived just around the block from us. So every day after school I'd go there, and there were all these etchings all over the house, and they were horses and cowboys and cattle and the old California style of living personified. So I would take my pencil and pen and sit down and copy them, and that really intrigued me that here was an artist who was way before me, and somehow he was still living because I was seeing his work on the wall and it was inspiring me. And I think that was my first inkling that maybe I wanted to be an artist. It was just something I naturally did anyway, painting and drawing, and couldn't stop really. There's been a lot of influences. I love Matisse, I love Gauguin, I love Mark Rothko. I'm kind of like all over the place. Wayne Thiebaud, who's still alive.
Is he a football player?
No. Yeah, actually, his name is spelled Thiebaud, and he's primarily up in San Francisco in the Bay Area and taught for a long time up at UC Davis, and very contemporary. Well, no, contemporary for the 60s, and very much California style. And I spent a lot of time at City College with Robert Frame, who was an amazing teacher and taught a lot of local artists here, and he was like a mentor to me. Even after I was out of his class, about once every 3 months I'd get a phone call from him saying, "Are you painting?" So he's like my conscience, and you know, usually I was painting, but if I wasn't, I hopped to it right away because he kept me honest. Let's see, Ted Villa is another City College artist an instructor that really influenced me a lot, even though he's a watercolor artist. Irma Cavett from UCSB influenced me a lot. So I think as an artist, you go through life and you have all these things stimulating you, and you pick and choose what works for you, and you try to take the best of all possible worlds and still come out with your own voice. I've also done a little bit of teaching, and it was interesting to me how you could set up one still life or be working on one scene and as many different students as you had, you'd have that many different versions of the same thing, because really art is a self-portrait. And it reveals a lot about you, which is probably why I have a hard time signing my paintings. It just seems like the final stamp, and I always feel like it's a work in progress, so I literally have to stop myself from continuing. And I've ruined more than one painting just by not knowing when to quit.
Well, what do you like about painting and what do you dislike about painting?
One thing I love about painting, especially when you're on site painting, is that it's like a little diary, and I can look at a painting and I can remember the day, I can remember the weather, I remember everything about the scene because I have an emotional attachment to it, because for one thing, you spend a lot of time looking at it, and also because there's something about it that draws you to it in the first place, or you wouldn't be trying to paint it. So I love, when it works, it's great. And you're just on top of the world. I would say my favorite parts are beginning a painting and ending a painting. It's that in-between part that I dislike, because you start going off on all these different roads. And the paintings that work best are the ones with clear intention. Typically for me, if I have a really strong idea of what I want to do, and I can have it done as quickly as possible so I don't veer off the path too much. Sometimes if I put a painting down and come back to it later, it's like one of my instructors, Bob Frame, used to say, it's like when you leave too much time between the initial inspiration and getting back to completing the painting, he said it's like eating cold pizza the next morning. Meaning that it's kind of hard to get back to where it was, and it's kind of gone beyond its peak. So I would say sometimes in the middle of a painting, if I don't keep my clear intention, I end up doing a completely different painting from what I started with. And sometimes that's a disaster, and sometimes it's a happy accident, and it takes you to places where you wouldn't have gone, or you didn't think you were going. So it's always an adventure.
What lessons have you learned in life in general?
Ooh, that's really good. Good question. I think as an artist, I've really developed a deep appreciation of beauty in all its forms, and it never ceases to amaze me. You can just be walking around and all of a sudden I see, oh, look at that red flower, for instance, against that blue sky. What an amazing color combination that is. Or just the way the light's falling on a certain thing. And basically, artists are dealing with light. It's more about the light falling on any subject than about the subject itself, because it's through the light, in my opinion, that you evoke that emotional response from a viewer. So, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
So. Can you, is there a story that family or friends tell about you that comes to mind that you can recount?
Well, this doesn't have to, it kind of has to do with art.
Okay.
When I was little, my parents started me out musically on the accordion. Eventually they switched to the piano because they had to keep buying me bigger and bigger accordions as I kept growing. So I was 5 years old, and my mom took me to the radio station where I played live on my accordion, KISS radio station, which is now where the new plaza is. It used to be the old KISS building, and now it's
in Santa Barbara.
In Santa Barbara, okay. Not Camino. That's the one out in Goleta. But anyway, it's the one where Nordstrom's and all those big stores are. And you can edit that part. Anyway, I remember playing on the accordion, and I think I was doing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and at the very end the announcer on the radio said, thank you, Nancy, it was a very good job. And I was so honest, and I was so bummed out that it wasn't perfect that I just blurted out, no, I hit an F sharp and it should have been a G. And my mom, I could see her in the background behind the glass, just mortified that I would say that. But that's kind of the way I am. I'm honest, and I try to paint honestly, paint what I see, and sincerely.
Nice. Do you have a website or any place?
I do. It's www.n, as in Nancy, Davidson, Davidson.com. This is called Gaviota Spring. And it's the hills of Gaviota, just after they've turned green. They've been brown for a really long time. So this was in the early morning, just after the sun had risen. And I was really taken by the way the sun shone on the rocks.
What medium is it?
It's an oil painting.
Anything else you want to say about it?
Well, the lighting, yes, that's what drew me to it, the really strong lighting, and the scene wasn't exactly like this. I put bits and pieces together to make a stronger painting, which is artistic license, as they say. Okay, you're welcome, Larry.